We weren't planning, we weren't dreaming, we weren't talking even about finances together.
Well, we do have a little bit of debt. Let me just add this up. I came to about 77,000.
We borrowed to be able to borrow. In hindsight, like, it was super dangerous. Like, we made it through okay, unscathed relatively. There's a lot of stories about people who don't. Embarrassingly, we didn't even sign up. I was too frugal to actually pay to do it. It's worth it. It's 100% worth it.
Before we jump in, I just got one quick ask. If you find value in this episode, the best way to support the show is by following or subscribing. So please do. It's free and it helps a lot. And if something stands out to you today, share it with someone or reach out. I would love to hear what resonates with you. Thanks for being here. Now let's get into it. Welcome to Money Emotion, where we ask a vital question. Are you putting what's been entrusted to you to its best use? This idea comes straight from the parable of the talents in Matthew 25, where Jesus challenges us, what are you doing with what you've been given? And that's a question that applies to everyone in every season of life, especially when it comes to our finances. It's not about how much you have, it's about what are you doing with it today? Are you struggling with debt? What are you doing? Are you in university or just starting out in life? What are you doing? Are you living comfortably? What are you doing? Are you earning millions? What are you doing? No matter where you are, you have a financial journey, and so do today's guests. I'm thrilled to welcome Justin and Sarah Ali, who once carried the weight of $80,000 in debt, but found a way out. Their story is one of perseverance, wisdom, and faith, and I can't wait for you to hear it. So let's dive in. Justin and Sarah, welcome to the Money Emotion podcast. Good day.
Thanks for having us. Yeah, good to see you.
Good to see you too. Genuinely, it's really pleased. I'll say for our listeners, we are old friends, although old in
You're old and
but
friends.
Certainly.
Well, no, you guys have not changed, and they're still Lego, so that's awesome. Look, by means of a brief introduction, could you maybe just let us know, who you are and where you're living now, and maybe how you ended up there?
Sure. I'll take that.
Yeah, sure. Well, as you're in Wales, we lived in Wales too. I made the journey over to the UK when I was like 13, and my family moved to England, and then found myself finished with college, and I moved down to Wales, which is where I met Sarah.
Yeah.
And that's how we made it to All Nations Church. I'm not sure if I'm supposed to
That's
reference that or not. But yeah, that's where we met you. And that connection at least is worthwhile mentioning. So, and we were part of the church there with you for
About
6 years.
Yeah.
After we got married, and during that time we were the youth leaders for a little while.
Mm-hmm.
And then God called us to move back home for me to the States, and we ended up moving to Albuquerque, New Mexico. And we've been back now for about 12 years. Well, back for me, and Sarah's.
This is home. Yeah, has been home for about 12 years. So, we're in Albuquerque, New Mexico.
And you pop back occasionally, see family.
We do. Every couple of years, we try and relax, see family, meet up with old friends. And we miss the green, but we love the American life here.
Well, you're fondly remembered. Even the youth who are no longer youth, fondly speak of their time with you.
Yeah.
It's amazing to see all the youth and what they're doing these days.
Those were like the best years of our lives. We loved those times.
It's that audience that maybe should be listening to this today. So
maybe some of them are. Some of them are.
Yeah, let's hope so.
Because your journey, once you got to the States, you had effectively at some point during that time accrued $80,000 or so worth of debt, and that kind of amount doesn't just sort of creep up on you. So I wonder, as you weighed that up and looked at that, how did you get to that point? And maybe what were the sort of the big chunks of that in there?
The word that immediately springs to mind is ignorance, like just complete. We just had no clue, like And I think we were just sort of part of the mindset that it started with student loans, which we both had from the UK. Right. Mm-hmm. So our student loans were in the UK. And for the most part, when we were in the UK, we didn't have any debt at all. It's definitely less pushed in the UK in our experience, at least back then. I mean, we've been over here for 12 years, so things may have changed.
They might have changed a little bit.
We, certainly when we were there, looking back on that part of our life, we didn't feel the pressure to go into debt. And it's like some people would borrow for a car and that kind of a thing. But, the everyday things that we saw Americans really getting, buried under in terms of, certainly didn't ever feel like a thing, but we were also fairly young and, we were amongst the sort of demographic of people who just everybody was broke. So didn't matter that much. And like a lot of our community were church and youth. And so we just hung out with like broke college kids would. So, so it kind of didn't push on us then. But we did both have student loans and we both kind of didn't even think about them. The first time we ever heard of Dave Ramsey and Financial Peace University was from Jeremy and Rachel Irvin, who other names that some people might recognize. They, when we first moved back to the States, we stopped in Florida and saw them for like a month or so. And, they were saying, hey, this is some stuff you guys should probably need to hear. And we started kind of listening to it. And my impression was, we don't have any debt. That's not really for us.
Even though we had the student loans, we were like, we'll be stuck with this forever because everyone has student loans. So we were like, that doesn't really apply to us. But then when we moved to New Mexico, Justin got a new job at an office. And I was working and we needed the 2 cars. So we needed to take out a car loan. And so that added to it. And then when we were talking about, where to live, we had family push us and say, you guys need to buy property. You shouldn't rent. You should buy. You should get on the property ladder. And so then a really lovely family member gave us a ton of money so that we could put down a deposit on a house and then some. So that's kind of the accumulation really of all the debt that we had all together, the student loans, the car loan that everybody has, and then that borrowed money to make sure we were on the property ladder. And I think just one day Justin was working and he thought, we do have a little bit of debt. Let me just add this up. And then, I came to about 77,000. And you describe it as you felt like you were being strangled almost, like you couldn't breathe.
It was
That's like a lot of money.
when you actually sort of looked it up. And I can't remember how or why, but I remember remembering the Dave Ramsey thing. And so I think I started listening to the podcast. He has a podcast where if you have access to it, it's hilariously funny. I think it's wonderful that he, goes on rants and talks about, there's a lot of different topics, but he is.
Yeah, he really is. But you hear about other people's testimonies of taking their debt-free journey. And I think for me, listening to that, that's what really impacted me. Like these were everyday people that decided to make a change in their journey in their life, that they didn't want to live this debt-filled life. They wanted financial peace. They wanted financial freedom. And so I think you started listening to that. And Justin's a leader, but he's not really a reader, And so one Christmas, he bought me The Total Money Makeover by Dave Ramsey. And I read that in one sitting. And I said, I trust you to lead our home, to lead our family. Let's just go for it. And let's just start this journey.
I did read the book, by the way.
Eventually.
So you building up to that, was the sort of overwhelm, was it more the knowledge that you owed all this money and it was sort of hanging over you? Or was it how it impacted your kind of monthly budget and gosh, if only this wasn't draining us?
Honestly, at that point, we weren't even doing a monthly budget.
That wasn't a thing for us.
There was very little recognition of goals or like what we wanted to do with our money that we couldn't, or it was just like, can we make it to the end of the month?
It was just paycheck to paycheck. It was just, okay, we need to take this trip. Let's put it on the credit card. We'll pay that off. No problem. Just that kind of mentality.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And we never, I'm a kind of a nerd. Or a big nerd. and so the credit card thing was a big one for me because we never went into credit card debt. We never paid a penny of interest in credit card. We always paid it off, but it was very much at the end of the month, we would pay it off and then have nothing left. And so it would kind of start the cycle all over again and so, the thing about getting points or getting airline miles or whatever with the credit cards is such a draw for a lot of people, myself included, that really took even after we, started teaching FPU and coordinating the classes.
It was hard for him to that
was a really tough one for me personally because it's it's not a thing. And, the sentiment of if you play with snakes long enough, you're going to get bit.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
It was kind of there's a lot of wisdom in the Bible. I love that. I was all throughout that journey, I was learning, things in Proverbs about money and, all throughout the Bible about how to steward what God has for us and realizing that for a long time, we weren't really stewarding it. Stewarding is an intentional action, not just doing bad things. It's needing to do good things.
Yeah, that's good.
So a lot of that then was if the paycheck each month was looking to pay off the month that you just had, or the month before that even, rather than any sort of planning, saving, budgeting. That wasn't part of what was going on.
Pretty much.
Yeah, there was a plan involved. It was we're doing okay. We're getting by.
Yeah,
that was it.
It's we weren't
no goals,
we weren't going further behind other than when we needed to buy a car. And then we were we don't have anything saved up to buy a car, so we got to take out a loan. And then it's the whole house thing. It was, and I get that sentiment too. Yes, you're throwing money away on rent, that phrase, floats around, but there's definitely some wisdom and parameters where buying at the right time makes a lot more sense than just going into debt, especially to borrow money to be able to borrow money. We borrowed to borrow.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure there's you're not supposed to do that, but we kind of found a way around it. But in hindsight, it was super dangerous. We made it through okay, unscathed, relatively. There's a lot of stories about people who don't. And
so for you, the tipping point was all of those coming together. Would that be right? That you've got this recognition. Gosh, we have this big debt. We're actually starting to see a bit more about what God says about how we should manage our money. We've read this Dave Ramsey book. This guy thinks you can live debt free and wants, seems to want to show us how to do it. Was there anything else in there? Or was that pretty much where you were at?
I think really the hope that came, at least for me, I'll let Sarah answer for her. But I was the one pushing it for sure. And I think the reason was because I was the one that sort of felt the weight of it, maybe because of the provider thing. I don't know. But, the sudden recognition of oh yeah, this is here. And oh yeah, we do have to deal with those student loans in the UK also. And when we first moved here, we said, we just kind of ignored those. We kind of just thought nothing of them. And then the hope of the baby steps that are in the Financial Peace University, that is a clear step-by-step plan. I'm not smart enough to come up with a plan to get out of $77,000 worth of debt, but thankfully somebody else was. And over, decades of sort of refining things, they found this plan that works almost every single time if you put in the work. And so the hope of having a way out of it was really the driver for me.
Yeah. And I think after I read that book and hearing other people's testimonies, I was just excited about working that plan. Like I feel like I'm a person I'm always up for the adventure, always up for the challenge. And then I could like see the life, the other side of it. And even though I thought, oh, this is going to be a lot of work, a lot of sacrifice, but it makes for some funny stories now of how we sacrificed so that we could pay off, you know, that amount of debt.
So it's all come together. You've read the book, you signed up, and then sort of how did that affect your life? What started to change, or once you'd signed up to this program then?
Well, embarrassingly, we didn't even sign up. I was too frugal to actually pay to do it. So we just started.
Yeah. We just started our own class. We first ever class we did, we were the teachers of it. We went to pastors at our church and we were like, hey, we're passionate about this. We're working through ourselves and we want to bring a bunch of people on board with us. And so, yeah, we've taught our first class and we were going through
while we were doing it,
the debt-free journey together. Yeah. And since then, we've taught a couple of classes each year, or at least one class every year. It's a 9-week program. And yeah, it's been amazing to kind of walk through people.
So for you guys, what were the adjustments you made to your life then to get out of debt?
Said no a lot.
No is a complete sentence.
We said no a lot. I remember I was working full time at the time, and as part of my job role, we would go sit at a Starbucks or go sit in a restaurant to write up reports as a team after we completed this work. And you know, all my colleagues, we ordering breakfast and coffee and tea. I'd be there with my packed lunch, with my salad from home, and I'd order a hot water, and I'll bring my own tea bags, and people would laugh at me for it. But then it was worth that little sacrifice to then pay off all this debt and live this debt-free life. Saying no to a lot of things. We had family that made fun of us for it. You know, we'd say, hey, what are the plans for this Christmas? Are we going ice skating? And they'd say, oh, why do you want to know? Do you want to put it in your budget? And we say, yes, we do. We need to put it in our budget. But now we're debt free, you know? So it's just kind of silly things like that really added up to a lot. I think those are kind of changes that we made.
Yeah. So you went pretty hard on it, right? You decided anything that is not in our sort of essential bracket is getting cut. Would that be the gist of it? Like how did you go through what stayed and what got cut out of your life for that season?
For sure. And that's going hard on it is kind of part of the recommendation, like through the Ramsey material. It's, you know, you kind of have to go through it like your hair's on fire, because if you don't, you know, if you're trying to do a little bit of this and a little bit of that and a little bit of this and a little bit of investing and a little bit of debt, you know, consolidation or you know, remediation or whatever, and you're trying to do, you know, a little bit of giving, and you're trying to do, you know, you're trying to do your vacations and you're trying to do your renovations and stuff, you're never going to get any of it done. And so it's part of that step-by-step process. It's very intense at the beginning to get out of debt, and then it ramps into the debt part of the Ramsey material is 2 of the 7 steps. The other 4 or 5 steps is like learning how to grow your wealth and be in a position where you can give like nobody else, and be completely debt free, the house and everything, and just grow, and like how to do it's way more like practical material to insurances and stuff. And I'm sure there's material, you know, in the UK that's helpful in an equivalent, but for us, it was just like the lighting a fire underneath us to realize that we needed to do something about it, and that there was material that was available that showed us how to do it and why to do it, and that it's the right thing for God's people to
I think that
steward well.
I think that's the the main part about it is knowing your why. I think with anything, whether you're starting a business, whether you're taking your family in a certain direction or you're going through school, like knowing the why. Why am I here? What is the purpose? Why are we saying no to this restaurant? Why are we saying we need to put this in the budget? Like, what is our why kind of long term? For us, it was right. For the sake of our family to raise our kids now in this debt-free life. I can't imagine it any other way, really. And so I think holding on to the why, Dave Ramsey talks about whether you put, if you want to go to Hawaii and you put that on the fridge, or you want to buy that car and you put that on there, or you want your kids to go to college debt-free, put that on there. So having that why, I think, is really important. Yeah.
And to your initial question about like what we did and the severity of it, like the mindset for me was the harder we go, the sooner we get out of this. Like the harder we cut, the sooner we can, get our vacations back and our lattes back or whatever, and so that is really why. And we cut
a lot of things,
pretty much everything.
Yeah, but then he worked like a dog,
and worked extra, sold stuff.
Yeah, sold everything, got promotions. I got promotions. Like we just worked really, really hard. And we stewarded what was in front of us, which we hadn't done previously. And I think God really honored that. And we saw, chipping away, we saw that debt disappear as we were faithful to what was in front of us.
And a huge, massive part of it was that we were on the same page.
Yeah.
For married couples out there, like, it's not going to work if one of you's super into it and the other's like spending all the time and like not on the same page. They're not agreed. And so sitting down together and talking about what our future could look like, what our future would look like if we didn't do anything different, was really big.
Yeah,
like just
huge,
the communication. And it forces you to communicate too. The budget obviously is a big part of being able to do something like that. And like I said before, we were not on a budget. And so budgeting was totally new to us. And it takes some time. Like you have to get used to it. You have to be willing to fail a few times, and you do. And we still do.
Even now we have emergency budget meetings.
We still have bread in our envelopes.
Yeah, we're like, just want the kids this month,
But, at least we're kind of aligned on where we're going and what our priorities are, because we sit down every month. Even if we struggle to stick to it, sometimes before the month begins, we sit down and we talk about this is what we want to try and spend on food, groceries, kids, kids, that kind of thing. And it just forces you to communicate.
So that is good.
It's key.
It's like, even though it feels like it would like cause tension in a marriage, it actually does completely the opposite, to be on the same page and to work through something like that.
And you're asking a lot of yourselves, because like you say, if you're going all in on this, you are stripping back all the luxuries, all the nice things, and you're out there doing more hours or more hustle or whatever you're trying to do. When the novelty of that maybe wore off a little bit, I don't know how long that might have taken, but I'm sure it did. How did you keep going a few months in, or a year in? Was it the why, or how did you stay motivated in those times?
I think it was the why, going back to the why are we even doing this in the beginning. But I remember the visual you had in your office. Were you thinking about that?
I was just thinking about that
so
too.
We were in a different house. I think, did you still have Lego? It doesn't matter. But he made this huge paper chain above his desk. So every morning he would start work at like 4 or 5 a.m. sometimes. And so he'd walk in there and he'd see this paper chain, and every link represented $1,000. And so I think having that visual helped him to work his butt off. And, I'd see it every day too. So having a visual like that really, really helped to keep going. Like, we've paid off this amount so far this year. We've got this amount left.
Yeah, the visual thing was definitely huge for me, and I specifically though, I think seeing the progress like helped. the visual thing for me, for us, it was a chain, and that chain sort of started like way up here above my desk and to the right, and it kind of looped down to the other side and then all the way down to the floor. And when you started seeing that chain like lift to the ceiling, it was like, hey, we're actually doing this.
Yeah, we can do it.
And then the chain got to the ceiling, and then it was just hanging on this other side, and it was like, hey, like we can do this. Like, and so that was a big thing for us. And I would say that celebrating little milestones along the way, we did have some fun in there. Like it wasn't, but it was at very specific intervals. Like, the debt snowball, the design of it is you pay off the smallest first, not counting any sort of interest rates or anything, the smallest first, you throw all of your energy and focus at that small one, which releases a payment that you can then apply to the next one. And then that releases a payment that you can apply to the next one. And, the snowball effect is kind of thought of as like, okay, you're releasing a payment, but really the way that it's done with the smallest one first, it boosts your morale every time you pay one off. And so you start with the smallest one. And I remember I even got super technical with ours, because our largest one was this down payment on our mortgage that we borrowed from some family. And the giving laws, the tax laws meant that technically they had to separate it. So the husband gave Sarah some money and gave me some money, and the wife gave Sarah some money and me some money. So we had like these 4 technical checks and so I counted those as our like steps so that we could still and
see
pay something off a little bit. I remember like even that like felt to me like just like a win. It's like, okay, we did another one. Okay, we did another one. And we would do, I can't remember what the little treats were. We'd go to Chick-fil-A, or we'd go out for what most people would consider a regular weekend meal. We waited until we paid off the car, and then we celebrated with ice cream, or then we paid off
just something we wanted
one
to do.
of the student loans, and then we went out to dinner,
but when we paid off everything, we went to this like pristine, amazing steakhouse.
We went to the best steakhouse
and
in the city.
Some people might look down the right-hand side and look at the steak is this amount of money. But we said to ourselves, when we go to this restaurant, we're just going to order whatever we want, because we just paid off.
Looking at the prices. I don't even think they had the
Tell me you didn't go put it on the credit
card. It was that kind of a place, it was.
It's not led to the story.
No, it was a celebration. Yeah.
So in that season, if I can come back to one part, when you were saying all the no's, how that's maybe easy to say, but how did that affect you? How did that sort of make you feel, and how did you cope with that? And in all those, you've touched on a couple of scenarios, but how did you keep yourselves positive and upbeat when you were saying no to so many people?
It was hard. Like we love people, and we love spending time with people, but we've always hosted a lot of people. So I think that helped us. And so when we'd have people, I'm just thinking, people would want to spend time with us, and hey, do you want to go get lunch after church? Or do you want to go out to meet for dinner? Do you want to go to this particular restaurant? We'd say, we can't do that, but we'd love to have you over. Justin makes good steak, let's come on over. And so we just balanced it out that way. So sometimes it was a bit like, we had to change our plans a little bit disappointing, if you like, but because of the type of people that we are, we just want to spend time with people. So that was our purpose in that, rather than like we want to go out and spend all this money. That's kind of the only example that I have.
I do remember that and agree with that. I think my answer is fairly different. Like I didn't care.
Yeah.
Like I was like, we are doing this.
Yeah, he's the nerd. I'm the free spirit. So,
hell or high water, like this is happening. Because I was the one that I guess initially felt the weight of it to start with. But then as we talked about it and dreamt of what our life could be like like I got myself and, Sarah too, into this mindset of like, this is possible. Like we can do this and we're going to do this. And so saying no, like, when our family was,
he doesn't struggle to
joking.
say no now. And,
most people who know me know that I don't really care what other people think, and I'm not about to start now. And so like, if you have a problem with us saying no, then that's on you. If you have a problem with what I'm focusing on and what I'm prioritizing in my life, that's not my problem.
We had ways to work around the situations where you're like, oh, I've got to say no, but people are the most important thing. So how can we spend time with this new family that just started to come to church? Let's have them over for lunch instead.
Or we'd go to things and just not do whatever people were doing, but we'd just be there.
Yeah, we just eat before we go.
I mean, that's good because people receive things very differently. Like you say, Justin, you're pretty focused. Listen, that's a you problem sort of thing. And your mind's made up. But maybe, Sarah, you took maybe at times more of that on board, or certainly, people listening, I know there's a big challenge for a lot of people who are like, can't cope with that. And they see the goal, but they're wrestling with themselves in the sacrifices they've got to make and what people will think. And that weighs on them heavily. Have you found since then that family and those friends have seen the fruit in your life and the good results and sort of been like, hey, well done?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely.
A lot of people, come to us and say like, how
ask us for advice.
How did you do that? And and we tell them, and then we tell them to sign up for the class. And we've paid for several people to come to the class because they don't think they can afford it, like we didn't. And now we're in a position to do that. Yeah. And so we just, we really feel like being debt free is worthwhile. Like wherever your situation is, and the podcast that I love to listen to, there's another encouraging part of that is that there are people who are way worse off than we were, and they can do it too, and they've done it and following the same plan, the same steps. And so, it's worthwhile. Every single one of them that does their debt-free scream on this podcast, the question comes, was it worth it? And they were like, absolutely it was. And that's 100% our experience and our encouragement to anybody out there who, is in debt, however you got there, whether it was, a lot of people end up in debt because of things that happened to them, like medical things or, whatever. And a lot of people end up in debt just kind of because they wandered in, they follow the norms of society. However you got there, just know that there is a better way. You can do it. And I'd encourage you to look at it.
I think that's great. And I'm really pleased to hear that people saw the fruit in your life as well. And, because for anyone who's finding, they're getting hit with people giving them little nervous jokes or kind of, a little bit of sniggering, like you say, meant in good humor maybe, but it still lands, but to know that actually those same people come around and see later and it's not that you are like, hey, look, we did it, but they're just there going, hey, actually, I see something, well done. I'm pleased that those people have seen that in you as well. And that sniggering doesn't last, it's for a season, because it's provoking things in people, as well. So that's awesome.
For sure. And there's a correlation there, like, or a simile with, sharing the love of Jesus too. Like a lot of times, people snigger at that too. And ultimately, like, you're living a light, shining Christ, and people at first kind of, it rubs them the wrong way, or they're uncomfortable for whatever reason, and they crack jokes and they play it off. But then, deep down, once they've had a chance to really think about it and reflect, they're like, those people have something that I don't.
And often they come back, right? They open up, they ask questions. The amount of people that come back in a time of need, suddenly, that's really good. Really good.
Yeah.
Coming back to your whole journey, what was there a moment or anything in it where you're like, this stood out as the biggest challenge, like a kind of a moment where you thought, we might fail here, or?
I don't know about failure, but I think during that time, paying off our debt over those 27 months, we did take a trip to the UK. I think somebody was getting married or something. And I think that was a challenge because we prioritize people. We want to be there for them. But it's a lot of money to travel across the ocean. So I think it wasn't a failure, I guess, but that was challenging for us. Like, okay, we need to start thinking about this. And even though we want to put this money towards our debt, we're going to have to make a sacrifice for, I think it was a wedding. Whether it was my brother's wedding or best friend's wedding. But anyway, I think that was challenging, kind of weighing that up. But ultimately, we prioritized our family in that respect. But I don't know about a challenge in terms of like, we felt like we were going to fail and not going to do it because this one's so driven. I was going
to say failure is not an option. But I would agree with that. That's probably the most challenging thing. Was the things that had to slow us down a little bit. Like there was never a point where failure was going to happen, but there were things that came up that we had to deal with that slowed us down, or put it on pause shortly, temporarily. I mean, so. We never got to the point where we thought we were going to kill each other.
Not related to this anyway.
Not then.
At least for me. But and it was hard. It was tough. And, there were days where it was just like, I don't want to get up at 5 and work the extra 2 hours today or whatever. But, ultimately it was worth it.
No, that's good.
I can't think of anything.
I'm glad. As Christians, how did you find your faith helped you in this journey as well?
I mean, kind of touching on what I said a little bit earlier, like my faith is a big part of what pushed me into it, right? The whole hearing, and things in the Bible you've heard your whole life, but then suddenly like you hear them, and you kind of like realize, actually, I'm not doing that. I'm not stewarding well. And, it's not out of intentional disobedience to the word of God. It's just out of like, you just kind of slide into it. And it's like, you just wander in and you're just doing what everybody else is doing. And, you're just doing what you think you need to do in, thinking about our car and, the advice that we're given about the house and like all of those things. They are necessary, but like, it's just the way that we'd handled things up until that point that forced us into the corner of needing to borrow, that like, I hadn't really, like, I just wasn't being intentional. We weren't planning. We weren't dreaming. We weren't talking even about finances together. And, there's wisdom in being intentional and learning things. But I think the stewardship part of it was really like a big driver for me in that, and then once we started down the journey, the why and like, the family tree side of it, changing your family tree and like making sure that our kids grow up. At that point we didn't have kids, but now we do. And like, to imagine what our life might be like now if we were in that position, it's just like, I'm so thankful that we did what we did when we did it and have really changed our life. And it in turn has changed what we can provide to our family. So
I think going back to your question, God wants every part of us, and that includes our finances. And we've always tithed, we've always had that incredible teaching to see the importance of that and the fruit of that. But going back to your word, like intentionality, being really intentional with it, and with the tithe and with your offering and what you're giving to other people and how you're stewarding this money that ultimately is from God anyway. And realizing even though we were stewarding well in this journey and that we were working our butts off, that ultimately God is in control of every single penny. And that if there was a need in that moment and we didn't have it, like God is our provider. So I think it just stirred our faith up even more. Like we've seen God move in miraculous ways in our finances and in provision throughout our whole marriage. And I think as we continue in this journey that we're talking about, and even now, like things pop up that we're like, "Whew, how is this going to happen?" But God is so faithful to provide for his children. And I think we're just reminded of that time and time again. And that's what we remind our students when we teach in Financial Peace University. Yes, we're stewarding what's in front of us. We're doing the maths and everything. But ultimately, God is in control. And the budget shouldn't be upside down. You shouldn't do your bills and go out to your restaurants and do everything and then tithe. The first things first is that you bring, your whole tithes to the storehouse. And so I think God honors that. And so I think that's how faith has constantly played a part in our whole journey, not just our debt-free journey, but our whole journey of when we, got married, moved across the country, moved again, having children, we've gone through IVF several times, the cost of that. God is our provider. In every single situation.
So then you get, like you say, a lot of that then is lessons that you've carried on into your life. Being intentional isn't something that stops when you've paid off all your debts. So a few years on from that, there's now a young Ali family. There's 2 small children. What does life look like for you guys now?
It's insane, but in a different way.
Life is just full. It's just so wonderful and so full. And having, we're talking about this debt-free journey, just having this financial peace. Dave Ramsey, his introduction to his radio show is talking about the Prince of Peace. And yes, we have Jesus first and foremost, and I think just us instilling in our children that ultimately Jesus is everything that we need. And he provides the wisdom for all these different areas of our lives, including finances. And to be able to, sit down to our budget every month, and always have our needs met because he's faithful, and just steward what's in front of us and not have this debt hanging over us. Like, it's so freeing. I remember when we just paid off all our debt and we were voting for a new CEO of our company, and she said something like, "We all have student loans," and then proceeded with her speech. And I was like, whoa.
Amazing.
I don't have a student loan. This is crazy. So just that, it really does feel like that weight has been lifted. So obviously anything like that feeling of not having this weight on your shoulders just really impacts this full, beautiful life that we now have.
Yeah. I'm so thankful that God pushed me into like learning what I learned when I learned it, so that was behind us before we started a family. And his timing is perfect in everything. Some of you know our journey about kids, and the way that God has orchestrated our life, maybe isn't what we wanted in the first place. It's not what we thought it might look like. But we're very glad that he did that at that time, because I couldn't imagine, people do it. But we were in a position where we could do it when it was just the 2 of us. And, I couldn't imagine how that might look now, be even more crazy. Full. I should use the word full.
Full. Let's go with full. Come on.
Our life is full.
Well, that's so great. God is really interested in your whole lives. And finances, which we're talking about today, is a part of that, and an important part. And as Christians, God even provokes us to say, "Hey, if you can get this right, I can reveal to you true riches." It's not an insignificant thing to steward your finances well. But I'm really just blessed. We haven't spoken for some time, and I'm really just blessed to hear the faithfulness of God in your life, to see it. And we know some of the challenges you faced, and I'm sure there's more, but to know that God's been with you, and your testimony is that whether it was finances or anything else that we were believing God for, He's carried us every step of this journey. So I'm just delighted to catch up with you as old friends and hear that. In closing, maybe back on the finance for 1 second. If you were talking to somebody who was in debt and they were like umming and ahhing about should they get out of this debt or should they just be like everyone else, like you say, and just make do with it, what would your encouragement to them be?
I feel like I've talked
about. No, go ahead. You got something. Go ahead.
Well, it's worth it. It's 100% worth it. But on, especially if you're a believer, the Bible says the borrower is slave to the lender. And that, I don't believe that we were called to be slaves to anything but the love of Jesus Christ. And, it's just, it has to be a personal revelation for you, but yes, it's going to be hard, but it's absolutely worth it. And, like we've said, find your why, like dream, allow yourself to dream of what your life could look like.
And how many years were you cutting those paper chains?
Available to you.
27 months.
We did 27 months. It took us to get through $77,000. It was so just over 2 years. And, if you go at it intensely like that, I mean, obviously individual situations are going to look a bit different, but you can do anything for a short period of time. And that's, why the intensity is recommended. You have to do it that way, because if you don't do it intensely, you'll fall away or you'll get tired or whatever. And so, throw everything you can into it and get rid of it. You won't regret it, and you'll be able to, live your dream.
Yeah, that's good.
And
I was just going to add to that. I think accountability is key. Obviously, we had each other, and we did have some people on our side too cheering us on. But whether you're single or you are married, you're a college student, university student, or whoever you are, find that person to cheer you on and be in your corner. Whether it's a pastor or friend, a mother, father, whatever. I think accountability is so key. And whether it does take you 2 years, 5 years, maybe it takes you 8 months or 2 months, depending on your situation, having someone in your corner, that community to cheer you on I think is really vital.
There's some gold there. Thank you so much, guys. I really appreciate you taking time out today to catch up with us. It's been wonderful to speak with you, just personally to hear, but you've got a really important story about a good God and about a good plan that you had and how He's blessed it. And I believe it will bless a lot of people. So thank you so much. And in closing, listeners, thanks for watching today. If you are new to the channel, please go ahead and like and subscribe, share this with your friends, and come back for more content. We will be asking more and more people, how are you putting your money in motion? How are you doing the best with what God has given you? Thanks.
Free audio post-production by Alf.